Okay, so again, we're going to go through the requirements for the Rails with JavaScript project. We're going to work on a Rails project and put JavaScript pieces on it. We're going to do as much as we can using JavaScript ES6 features, meaning the JavaScript that came out in 2015, where arrow functions were born and use constructor functions to treat them, to make classes out of things. We're going to take JSON data and turn it into JavaScript object models. And we are going to show the data of an index page. Just like over here, I have a list of blog posts that a Rails view is showing us. Well, I want to also surface that data with JSON in JavaScript. Same thing for a show page, meaning the data of a show page. So if I clicked on a single page for one post, like a show page in a Rails app, the data that I would get out of that page, I want to get that from retrieving it with JSON from a Rails controller. And I'm going to walk through all of those items as we do it. I'm just kind of walking through the requirements right now. So the data of an index page, the data of a show page. We want to show at least one has many relationship. So in our tried and true example here, a post has many comments. So whatever your Rails app, look at your project and think about, well, what do I have a list of, and how do I do a has many? And we're going to set up our Rails controller to surface this data so that if I have a post, I can see its comments, and we'll show that in a second here. We have to render a form. There's a few different ways to do it. You could pull in a Rails view over. I say pull it over, meaning make an AJAX request to a Rails route to get a particular form. Just like when you go to posts new in Rails and the whole page refreshes and up comes a form, that form you can actually retrieve with JavaScript. And so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is just create a JavaScript, create the form in JavaScript and put it onto the DOM, document object model, just through JavaScript, and don't even bother talking to Rails for it. But in all cases, the data that comes back from Rails is going to be in JSON format. So if I went to posts.json, there's a reason that data shows up like that, all nested and pretty, because we set up our controller to do that. And you notice that each one of these posts here, here's a list of 4 posts. And on the first post, it's got an ID, a title, a content, and it's got this little array of comments. That's what we mean by a post has many comments, and that's how I'm meeting the requirement of a must demonstrate at least one has many relationship through JSON. This is the has many relationship done through JSON. So we want to make our controllers and our serializers do all this work for us, and we'll walk through that. So then we say there's the form, and at least one of the JavaScript object models must have a method on the prototype. Kind of fancy talking. What it really means is we're going to take this JSON data and turn it into a JavaScript class. And once we have an instance of a post using that data, we should come up with some custom method that we can call on the prototype of it. Sort of like saying, like on the blueprint, if every time you create a new dog, I want to have the custom method that allows me to groom the dog or feed the dog, whatever it is. So don't be intimidated by some of this language here. You've done it all in Rails and Ruby up till now. It's just another way to do it on the front end with JavaScript. And of your future work, it's going to be probably more along these lines than it is along lines of Rails. I'm so happy that I learned Rails. It taught me how to think in terms of RESTful, MVC architecture, all those great things. But Rails views, I probably am not going to use them as much in my work in the future as I am going to use JavaScript and JavaScript libraries like React and Vue and whatever else comes down the road, Angular, which has been down the road. So, it's worth learning this. Some people come to this project and go, well, why? I already have Rails views. My project already works. Why do I care so much about this JavaScript thing? Number one, your future's, part going to depend on it. It's one of the projects you have to do. It also works faster, and it has this wonderful thing about asynchronous requests, so that we don't have to completely lock up the DOM every time, or lock up the browser every time we want to do something. Like we do with Rails, if I go to post number 2 here, it completely refreshes the page. I can't do anything else with that page until post 2 is done loading. And of course, it doesn't take forever to do, but what if that was an API request for a bunch of data? So about maybe 2006, I think, is when it first started to happen, when people began to realize they could do this asynchronous request through JavaScript. The idea is that the logic runs on the front end. Instead of having to call back to the database, the server, for every single view that your app shows, we have logic that runs on the front end very quickly. So that's a couple of the reasons why we do it. Questions, anybody? Any comments? I'd like to just repeat everything I just said, but now I'm going to point to an app and show you where all this happens in an app. So I'm going to center that in the middle. And here is the code for this guy. I hope it's okay. Can you all still see that font if I make it that size? Is that still readable for you folks? I hope.
Good for me.
Good, thank you. Okay. And I'm using VS Code here, which is my favorite editor. So let's just go right down through this. How do you do this thing? Maybe a quick tour of the app first, just to show you what stuff is. So in our database, so typically when we first look at an app, we'll look at the database and just see what's the schema look like. Pretty straight ahead schema. A post has a title and content, and a comment has a post ID. In other words, a comment belongs to a post and has content. Let's see. I highly recommend everybody do a seed file. Seeds. Create some dummy data in your app so that you can accomplish a lot of things. It helps you to test it out, helps you to make sure that your forms work, and that the data that comes across is predictable because you've created sensible data that conforms to your data model. Can't tell you how much trouble this has saved me in trying to design an app and tweak an app is just creating a seed file. And it's not that complicated. In our example here, post, create with a title and content, and you just make a few posts. And notice I make the post first because these comments down here all have a post ID. So top to bottom, when you run rakedb seed and run this file, it creates the post first so that post ID is a thing. Post ID 2 is a thing, and post ID 3. If you did it in the wrong order, it won't work. Also, forcing yourself to make a seed file like this will make it'll help you get your thoughts straight on what your database should be doing. And sometimes you'll have strange relationships in your database that don't quite match up to reality, and this will help reality test your database. I have a custom rake task I love to use for this to drop the database, recreate it, run the migrations, seed the database, and restart Rails. This is on Postgres SQL database as opposed to SQLite because I want to put it up on Heroku, and the Heroku only talks to Postgres. So whenever you drop a Postgres database, you can't just run the migration, so you have to create it. So I have this custom rake task here, which will repopulate the database and everything. So I'll just quickly show you that. And I'll stop the server. And I created that task over here in tasks, DCMS rake, which is like DCMS. So drop, create, migrate, seed is why I came up with that. If I run rake-t, I will see all my tasks that are on this app. And most of these, almost all of these except for this one right here is the one I created. These are all native to Rails. So when you create a new rake task, you create a file that ends in the word .rake like that. That's why it shows up in this list. And there's a lot of different ones you can do to back up your data, replicate the data, whatever you want to do. There's a lot of different things you would use these utility functions to do this kind of thing. So I'm going to run rake db. Actually, let me move this over here. And rake db DCMS. It will drop the database, migrate the database, or create the database, migrate the database, run the seed file, and start the server. And I'll just refresh here. Oh, 3001. I've got this on 3001 for some reason, different port. And actually, having a bookmark of all the ports that you work with is a great, good idea. Just a quick, easy way to get around. So we're back here, and this is my 3 posts. And if we go to one of the posts, we see the 3 comments that go to that post. So I've removed any issue I have of my data this way by having the seed file. Okay. So let's move right on with the project then. We want to make sure that.
Question for you. I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but
yeah.
Are those rake tasks? Where do you find is there like a list of those somewhere, or do you have like a reference for?
Yeah, I mean, in your, I'll stop the server and just this rake, and I'll use the up arrow, get back to this command here, rake-t, shows you the list that comes with Rails. The only new one I put in here was this one here, the one I just talked through. The rest of these are already there. Then of course you could just research on the Rails documentation where they're, so just Rails rake task. And probably you could say something like, oh, I want to learn a rake task to back up my database. And probably is there a rake task for backing up all the data in your database? Yeah, there's gems, there's rake tasks, there's a lot of different ones. But that list that I just showed is pretty extensive already. I mean, I haven't used, gosh, most of these I haven't used.
Yeah, I was just curious because I saw the rake tasks command in there and .invoke and stuff, and I've never seen that stuff before. So.
Oh, yeah. The invoke is like the .invoke function there is just we're calling this task and invoking it here. That's just how you put it inside of code. So rakedb create over here is one. I've taken that and put it in here, and I'm calling it here migrate seed. Those are all like rake tasks that are already within the set, you know, that always comes with Rails. Here's just how you're calling them, and if you're going to put them inside of a custom rake task. There's quite a bit of documentation on it too. And again, I get a little discouraged if the documentation is so deep. I just try to find the one thing I'm trying to do and learn that, and then add to it, you know, over time. Just like Git, you never learn everything there is to do with GitHub, but learn how to do a couple things, and then just add one at a time. And when you want to try to learn a new thing, like how to do git stash, there's one, for example, to stash your current changes somewhere while you move off into another repo to work. Just look it up, read about that one, and just be content with the fact that you've added a little bit of something to your knowledge instead of despairing that you haven't read the entire manual. You know, I don't think anybody ever has read all the manuals. Never. It's your ability to find the manual. It's probably more important than having read the whole thing. So that's that. Let's see. I found a nice gem for backing up the database and for creating an entity relationship diagram. I don't want to divert too much into that, but I found little toys like that I like to do to back up the data, replenish the data. And anyway, I just highly recommend it. It definitely helps. So let's see. First thing I want to do is set this app up so that it can have serialized data. We have to have JSON data in our routes here so that it'll work. What's going to happen is we're going to serve up through our controllers the data of our various views and stuff. So right now, your Rails app just renders whatever view goes along with the particular action. So here we are on the post controller, index action. When left to its own devices, it's going to respond, and it's going to return you back the index view. So if I comment out this stuff here, this code that I have here, implicit rendering, that is going to render this views, posts, index. So whatever this view is, it's going to refresh the DOM and show you this particular view. If I go here and just refresh That's, well, if I start the server, sorry about that. Without even telling this controller, render index page for me, it just knows, because I have a view called index, and this one's on port 3000. So again, I have a list of ports. It's a good thing. So that's the Rails view. And what else about that? That's also my default route in my config file here, or my, let's see, no, I guess I didn't. Yeah, route to post index. So I've told Rails that given no other instructions, when you open up, go to, I'll comment this out, see what happens when I refresh this. It's running slow. I'm curious. Sometimes as you run Activity Monitor, you'll see many processes running in here. I only expect to see one Ruby process running in Mac, and this is Mac Activity Monitor. Sometimes they'll write funky code that'll start multiple Ruby processes and give you strange results. So I always have this in my back pocket. If I think things start to run too slow, I check this out. So without a route to go to, /nothing, Rails says, yep, the Rails started, but you haven't told me to go anywhere. By default, I'm just showing you this happy little page. So that's why we have a route. And I'll just refresh this, and now it'll say, oh yeah, route to post index. So that means a post controller index action. And right now, all it knows is that it's at an index action named word index, that it's going to implicitly try to find a view in the views folder for posts with the same name. So that's why that's working the way it is. This respond to do thing here, this block of code, all that does is say that Rails, if you ask me for HTML, I'm going to give you the index page, the index view. If you ask me for JSON data, I'm going to give you JSON. I'm going to render JSON data and use @posts as the clump of data that I'm going to give you. So you could tell it whatever you want, but right now it's going to give @posts, meaning all the posts. That Rails will work up JSON data by default this way, but we're going to go a step further. So here in our gem file, we're going to add active model serializers gem. And that's what's going to give us not only the Rails data for a post, but whatever active model stuff applies to a post. So if I go to the post model, a post has many comments. Rails by itself won't give me that. That's why we use that gem. Active model serializers. I thought I had it open there. There we go. That's why we use this gem. It's sort of like takes whatever active model relationships you have, makes them available in the JSON data, so that @posts, if I set up my serializer properly, will show me all the related comments like I showed. Once you bundle that gem, you can run Rails G serializer, and then the name of the model, like that. Now we've already run it, so I don't need to run it again, but that's what creates this serializers folder and a post serializer. When it's first born, all it has is an ID. So I've added in these database columns so that that data will show up. I've also added in has many comments to take advantage of that active model serializers gem. If I didn't have this in here, let's take that out for a second. We're going to go to /posts. And without saying anything, we get the posts view. If I go .json, in other words, I'm asking the controller to give me JSON data, notice it gives me the 3 posts. That's all good and happy, but it doesn't give me the has many comments. But if I comment that back in and refresh this guy, now each post has a list of comments attached to it. And you want to, take advantage of this. Have all of this data available in all its glory in JSON at the server to make your life easier in JavaScript. Does anybody have any questions about that? Any comments, questions to see how that's working? Also, too, if I took out created at and content, let's take that out. It's pretty intuitive by now. You're going to see, oh yeah, okay, look at that. The comments are still there, but now all we have is an ID and a title. And then there's some labs that go through this too. You can get real specific about the stuff you show up in these serializers. I tend to just put the whole kitchen sink in there because I want to see as much data as I can. Because I know that if I can reach over and get a single post, I can get all that related data. When I say reach over, I mean reach over with Ajax and make a request and get a single post. I'll get every single comment that's related to that post if I've set it up that way. So right now we're on the post controller index action. You have to do it for any action where you want to have data show up in JSON. You have to do this respond to do thing. What does this refer to? This is what is referred to as the JavaScript model objects. Yes, Ethel, this is what we'll use to create JavaScript model objects. I'll spin ahead to that just to answer that, make it more plain. Over here in the JavaScript world, where I say get posts, and I put a URL into an Ajax request to that very same URL we're talking to right now. I ask for a method of get and a data type of JSON. Very same request we just did. The data that comes back is this JSON data. So if I go debugger here, I'll move it down below this console log. It's in and of itself, that's just JSON data. The next thing we're going to do is turn it into a JavaScript model object. And that's where this comes in, this new capital P post. I can call that there on line 22 because I have designed this nice class constructor here. And its job is, in the constructor, is to take in an object, just a key value pairs that are matched up to that JSON data that's coming in, and create me an instance on the JavaScript side, an instance of a post. So back when we first learned Ruby and we talked about an instance of a dog, and a dog has a breed and an owner and an age, this is the same thing, but it's just in JavaScript land. And it's the reason we're doing this is, again, we made a very fast request to get this JSON data back from the server. When it came back, we did a very organized thing with it. We turned it into a JavaScript object model for a very specific reason, so that we could work with an instance of a post and do all sorts of stuff on the web page without having to go back to Rails for more information and lock up the browser and stuff. So to follow that conversation through, once I spin up an instance of a post, I can put magic powers on that post prototype, and I can call them anything I want. This one right here, I'm highlighting post.prototype.posthtml. That's a little custom function that will create a little piece of HTML that I can put onto the web page, made up of this.title, this.content, which I just interpolated. When you call the dog class and you call .groom and then the dog is happy, remember those exercises? Well, this, or in the dog class example, self, the instance of dog was the instance that was doing that method. So that's the same thing here. Here we call it this. So an instance of a post, if I call .posthtml on it, I can create a little framework here of how the HTML is going to look with the title of that post and the content of that post. And I haven't used them, but I could also use the comments. I could spin through those and have that be part of this array as well, or not array, this HTML.
So it's just an instance method that's like the equivalent of the use of self dot something?
Exactly. Took me 20 minutes to say it, but you nailed it. It's exactly right. Exactly right. It makes your code much more organized too, because now you're just dealing with objects. So you create an instance of a post, you can call post HTML and put it on the DOM. Here's one where I create a new post form. Actually, in this case, I don't, that's another subject. I'll get into that in a second. When I create this class post, one of the things I could have done was take this form actually and do it up inside of here. And in this case, go static. And the only difference now is I don't need an instance of a post to call new post form. I can call capital P dot new post form. So here, dot post HTML, I have to do, that's an instance method. This is essentially a class method. So again, that should seem somewhat familiar in terms of how that works. But again, back to the original question, this data, let's see where, let's go further. We kind of went all the way to the end of the food chain there, of what we do with the data when it comes through. Here's where the data comes in when we do this get post thing. But I'm not firing off get posts just happenstance. I'm usually attaching it to some sort of a button or a link that I'm listening to. So that's the other piece of this food chain we're talking about is jQuery and JavaScript. We're listening to things on the DOM for events to happen. Typically it's a click, but it could be a mouse over. It could be one of many events, but in most cases we're doing a click. And I've selected every instance of get posts here on my code, just so you can see how it's working. I'm listening for a button. Here, this is the jQuery selector, and I'm listening for a button element that has an ID of posts-data. And when it has a click event, I'm going to fire off a function and pass the event of that click into it. And then I have this event prevent default on here so that the button doesn't click itself. And whenever a button with an ID of post-data gets clicked, this function fires, and then this function get posts is launched, is executed, invoked. You might notice here too, let's go further up. Here I am listening for a click. I'll turn it on. So when the document loads, this document ready thing, that's what this is here. It just means that when the document has completely loaded, when the whole page is loaded, this part runs, and I'm console logging, oh yeah, this file post.js loaded, to just comfort myself, reassure myself that it loaded, because over here in Rails it might not. I want to make sure that. So let me back up a square. We have modified our Rails app so that it can serve up JSON data in the controller. And if you don't get this working, there's no point in working on the JavaScript yet. So we can see JSON data here. Then we've got JavaScript running in our app, jQuery and JavaScript, and we've created a file over here in the assets JavaScripts folder, and I have a function ready code here that's going to load when the page loads, and then I'm console logging the fact that it loaded, and then I'm firing off listen for a click. So I should be able to see that over here in my Rails world, and I don't. Why don't I see that?
It shouldn't matter to me, but does it bother anybody else that JavaScript starts stuff off like with lowercase and then has like uppercase in the middle of it?
That's a personal problem you're going to need to get over. No. Oh, what you end up wanting is consistency, you know. That's the main thing. But there's a method to the madness too, and especially in different languages have different requirements like that. But why is this not loading?
It's like a whisper and then a shout.
Exactly. So I expect to see this console log here. Post.js is loaded, but I'm not seeing it. Why is that? Oh, it doesn't like my What did I do here? Let's see. I may move that back just because I just don't want to. Okay, so now it's loading. Yeah, that was a little silent killer there, huh? It didn't. It was breaking on this form. I had moved this over, had left a function keyword in there from back when this was down below, and it was thrown up on that. But see, now post.js is loaded, so I know that my file over here is actually my post.js file is loading and working. A little bit about this too. This application manifest is where all of our dependencies load. So if JavaScript is not loading or jQuery is not working, start looking in here. This required tree makes it possible that anything that's ends in .js over here is part of the app loads. It doesn't matter what file. You could put it all in one file. You could create another file over here called anything JS, and I could put a document ready in there as well, and then I could say, okay, when this runs, I could write const equals 12, and then I could come over here and refresh this page, and it shows me that, well, I should say the name of this file is asdiff. Save that. So now you can see over here in the console log, asdiff.js is loaded, post.js is loaded, and if I type zx, whatever it is, so anything in any one of these files is alive and well. We might separate them out this just to make it easier to manage things. If there was a lot of files having to do with posts and a lot of files having to do with comments, maybe you might separate them out. If you were making a lot of calls to other data services, you might make a separate, services.js. But just understand that require tree and this JavaScript manifest, they call it. I don't know why it's called application.js. It should be called manifest.js, but it's called your JavaScript manifest, application manifest file. Anything listed in here is going to run. Another thing I've done is in the views, layouts, application layout, you're going to have references to turbo links up here in these two. Mine are both removed, and if you have them, you might choose to remove them because they can sometimes interfere with how this jQuery behaves. So we remove it there. We also remove it in the gem file. I might have deleted it here. Let's see. Yeah, it's deleted, but there's a gem. I would take that out of play, and then also you'll see references to it here in this application manifest turbo links. So I take it out because we're taking control of the DOM here with this JavaScript and jQuery. So we don't need turbo links pre-guessing, prefetching stuff that we may not want it to prefetch. Speaking of that, though, I'll get rid of this file, this asdiff file now. I don't need it. It's just for demonstration. I am specifically naming my functions and calling them at specific times. When my thing loads here, I'm calling listen for click. And that's where I'm listening for a button with an ID of post data. Let's see if we can find it. So you want to connect the dots between the JSON data that you served up in the Rails controller and made available and the requests that you make. But the other thing you want to connect the dots on are what you're listening for on the page and how do you find it. So this jQuery button ID post data, if I grab that code and go over here into my DOM console and paste that in there, it should find something. I mean, I'm listening for it. It better be there. And if it's not there, maybe I shouldn't be listening for it right when the page loads, because there might be some other, this isn't that complicated of an app, but let's say we loaded a whole book of posts and some sort of subset of data that each had a little button to listen to nested in it. And I listened for it upon page load. That might or might not work. I'm more comfortable knowing that I'm going to call listen for click after I know something's on the page and in that order. And that might make more sense after we post data, like this post HTML, when we put it onto the DOM. Makes more sense to listen after we know we put it on there in the first place. So I'll get into that a little bit here. But anyway, so this button of ID post data looks like it's out here somewhere. I don't know which button it is, but I know it's out there because I found, because when I pasted it into the console of Chrome, I found it. If I light up this little CSS selector here, I can float over stuff. I think it's one of the, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's that there. Button of hashtag post dash data. That's the button I'm listening to get posts. So when I get posts, let's see what happened there. I didn't get anything, no data. So it's another way to test this. Go back to console. Oh, it doesn't like me coming from this side. I'm gonna go from a different port. I don't want to get into all the reasons why that, but basically the IP address I was coming from was conflicting. Again, button right there. If I click that button, we have landed in this debugger that I set way back when we first started here. This debugger right here. And in the console, I can see where it says, I like to do these console log with a little bit of a label. So the data is, and you can see over here, the data is. And there's that's the JSON data that I got back. The same way as if I went to posts.json. That's that same it's three items, three posts. In an individual post, there's it's saying 5 items because there's title, content, created as 3 items. Maybe that's why it's 5, but anyway, that's the same stuff, same data that's coming back there. And this is me talking to Rails directly, right in the browser. So I guess what the main point is Rails is still Rails. You're just going to these controllers in a different way now. You're making requests to the Rails server to the same old routes that you always did. You're just doing something different in your response to those requests. And because we set up this posts index to serve up JSON data if asked, that's why that data shows up there. And that's why in my JavaScript, when I make an AJAX request to that very same URL, /posts, a GET request for JSON type of data, when done, the promise that comes back, this is an AJAX request which has a promise, meaning it doesn't happen instantly, might not happen right away. Our code is accommodating that by saying, well, when you're done, I'm sort of talking to myself, that's how I see it anyway, run this function on whatever came back. I'll call it data right now. You could call it anything you want, but you need to do something with it that comes back. And the thing that comes back is this JSON data, but I can't put that data straight onto the web page as it is in JSON format. It's a JavaScript object, and the DOM wants to get strings of HTML. So that's one of the reasons why we have to turn this data into strings that can go onto the web page. And the most organized way to do that is to use this class constructor, make myself an instance of a post using that data that came back. And once I've made an instance of a post, I can call my custom methods on it to create that string of HTML and put that onto the web page. Questions, comments? Anybody at all? So this data that's come back, this JSON data that we stopped in the, let's go back and do that again. Normal page, post.js loads, listen for click has been fired. So we are now listening for a button of ID post data on this button right here. That's the button I listen to. And I put that button there. I gave it that ID intentionally in my view. So you can do this. So here in the application layout, I created myself a button with an ID of post-data. And no mystery. I can listen for that button because I gave it an ID. And on click, I'm going to fire off a function. I'm going to pass the event so that I can call event prevent default. I don't want it to click itself. I want it to wait. Once it's clicked, we fire off get posts with the parentheses, which is so the JavaScript can actually get posts is a function, but it's not a function until we call it. You have to call it with the parentheses. So that what fires this. That makes an AJAX request over to the same URL, posts get of JSON data. The data that comes back, we console logged it, and then we stopped in this debugger. So let's do that. I'm going to hit it again, get posts, and hits this debugger. And you can see over here how it in the Chrome how it looks. And Chrome's so cool. You can see so much. I can float over this data and see it. See the 3 posts. It's amazing. It's like having binding.pry, but on steroids, really. Lots of things I can see here. I could go to the console and type. I know data is my variable. It's alive right now because we've stopped the server. We've stopped in this debugger right here. That's why I'm able to do this. A few lines later, data's gone, and it's out of scope, and you won't be able to get to it. But the first thing we do is call new, that little blue new word, function word, capital P post, and we pass in some of the data. Now I could loop over all this data. There's 3 of them here. In my example here, I'm just taking one of them. So data right now is an array, and I'm just going data, give me the first one. That object right there is the object I'm passing here to this constructor in class post. And wouldn't you know it, it's matched right up with, close this over, you can see. It's matched right up with these attributes of ID, title, content, comments array. So when I call new post and the object I've passed in, I'm doing that with each one of these items in this data array. Right now I'm just doing the first one. Hopefully everybody can see why I'm doing that. But otherwise you could just loop over it and put them all onto the DOM. And in JavaScript you would just use a for each or map over them. Then let me move my debugger down. So another thing we do is we use debugger very carefully, one step at a time. I never really go that much farther into the unknown from what I really know and believe. I started off with a Rails app that I know that works, a data model that works, with a seed file that works. I put in the active model serializers gem so that my serializers would work, and I generated all the serializers, put all the columns from my database into those Rails serializers so that when I went to my controllers and served up JSON data at the controllers, that they would have all of the active model relationships with my data. Then I verified that in the browser, all that worked. I got JavaScript running over here. I got a document ready code running with a little console log to reassure myself that it's actually loading and to troubleshoot that and dig my heels in if it didn't work. I listened for a click of a button. I planted that button there on the DOM by very specifically going into my application layout here to put that button so that when I click it, I'll know what button I've got and what its ID is so that my jQuery will work when I listen for that button to be clicked. So it's very intentional. I'm about to listen. Here's what I'm going to listen for. I'm listening for a specific thing because I gave it an ID of a specific ID. It's like there's a reason for everything. I call event prevent defaults that the button doesn't click itself, and then I call get posts. I could do that, take that code right out, and instead of calling this listen for click, it could be get posts. But I separated it out here just so that we could all see the steps of what's going on here. I'll go back. I like it this way because I can see step by step what's happening. Because to me, if the listening isn't happening, well, then why? Why am I not listening? Well, jQuery is not working. Okay, well, it's working now. Well, now I'm listening. Well, I'm listening, but it's not. I'm not landing in here. Why is that? Well, maybe you've got the wrong ID on the button, or maybe you didn't prevent default. So that's why I like this different steps of it. Oh, it's jQuery is loading. I'm listening very well. The button's getting clicked. I'm preventing default, but I'm not seeing any posts. Well, let's look at that. Maybe there's a problem with how this Ajax thing was constructed. Are you going to the right URL? Do you have a comma after each one of these guys? Well, the ones inside anyway. So this object between those two lit up curly brackets, that's the object we pass to .ajax with a URL and a method and a data type. And you can verify each one of these things along the way. That's why I like this approach. Actually prefer this over the .get or fetch or whatever. And it doesn't take up any more time, but I can see exactly what I'm doing. And especially when you're learning this stuff, it's kind of good practice. I'm landing in this console log, and you know, I'm not seeing data. There's a reason for that. Well, again, verify, are we getting JSON data at the end of the controller when we ask for it? Okay, we got that far. We're console logging the data. Let's see if my post works, because maybe my class constructor down here screwed up. Because we know that we have data over here where we stopped. I'll refresh this again. Post.js is loaded. Always comforts me to know that. My button is ready to be clicked there. The button of ID post-data. And who knows, maybe I would have said post_data and messed that up. There's a lot of ways to fall off the train here. But I'm going to click post, and I intend now to see this console log happen. And when I click this thing, because we're listen for click, that particular button's going to click, and get post is going to fire. We're going to get data back. We're going to console log that data, and my post is going to be a new instance of capital P post. And I'm going to land in this debugger and see what's available to me at that point. Everybody with me so far? Is anybody against me so far? I'm going to click this button, and I'm going to land in that debugger.
Well, I got to catch up to you, sir. Just give me some time. Well, I promise you I'll aggravate the hell out of you with a bunch of questions as I get more into JSON and JavaScript. I'm just not there yet, that's all.
Well, but you can sort of see this, the flow as I talk through it. Can you feel the kind of flow of it?
In general, the general concept of it makes sense. I mean, it's really, even though it's a different computer language, it's still the same basic concepts, it looks like.
That's right on. That's right. And you know, you're going to find more and more the concepts that you learned early on will be with you for life. And all will change is the flavor of syntax. And we're still going to be looping, talking to variables, making objects, doing something to the page. Just in some different language. So once you go through a few different iterations of languages, that becomes apparent, and you get a little less overwhelmed by it's all brand new. Oh my God! Because first, early on, it's like literally it's all brand new. It all looks like an emergency to me, you know. So hopefully, yeah, maybe you couldn't spit it all right back immediately tonight, but at least you can see the flow of how we got here. So I landed in this debugger. I console logged that data. You know, the data is this array. Now my post should be a thing. And see how it's capital P post? That's an instance of post. The title, the content. Let's see, do I have any comments? I have 3 comments on it about dogs and cats and whatnot. That's all there, and I can do whatever I want with that data. So now I have, just to follow through on the rest of it, I have this post HTML that we have not called yet, where we landed in this debugger, but we haven't called post HTML. But all we're doing is, now that I have an instance of post, I'm going to say, okay, a new variable called my post HTML that I just made up is equal to my post, where I call the custom function on it with the parentheses, or it won't work. So I can actually do that in the console and see what comes back. Let me go back up further and do it again. So what comes back is that tailor-made HTML that I designed right here, down here. This dot title, this dot content. And if I wanted to add, keep the comments in there, I would do probably some, this is maybe, let's see, post comments equals this dot comments dot map and comment and then return I can do it. Comment dot content. So I'm saying post dot comments is this dot comments, meaning an instance of post has an array of comments on it. So I want to map through those separately before I put them into my HTML. So post.comments is going to be comment.content. And so if I grab that variable and stick it down here, this dot, no, it's not going to be that. It's going to be just post comments. Does that look right? We'll refresh this. It doesn't like it. What did I do wrong? There's that. There's that. There's that. Comment.content. Post. Expected token. It doesn't like something about what I just got done typing, so let's get it. Does anybody see it? Backtick? Ah, I could. Post comments. Maybe I just have to do this. No? See, there's backticks already here, beginning here and here.
Line 54?
54?
The backticks for line 54?
Hmm. I mean like that with the dollar sign? Oh. Like this?
Yeah, I think.
Aha. Haha. Right on. Is that you, Ari?
Yep.
Awesome, man. Good catch. So I didn't interpolate my comments like I had planned to, but now that I've got those backticks in there, the same one, the same reason I got them in here. I don't know why I didn't catch that, but great catch. So the only thing different about this HTML now is I've separated out the array of comments into its own variable that I can then put onto the page here. So now this is, I love all dogs. I have a good dog. I'm a cat person. Those are my 3 comments on this post. And now they're part of that HTML. Well, that was good. Oh, another thing too, see that comment, those commas in there. I think I can do dot join. I think that's it. Let's try it again. I want to get rid of those commas. No, what is it? What am I doing wrong there? There we go. See that? There was a comma, because you're making an array here when you map, there's a comma between each one. So that's now these have no comments. So now I can take that, now my HTML is that much, much more involved. And also too, now I'm showing the has many. I'm showing post has many, but I got that data from the JSON data that we pulled back. That's 3 comments. Oh, and each single comment has, each single post has 3 comments. There they are. Another reason why the seed file is so important, because I know what that data should be because of these posts and comments that I created. All right, cool. Let me see if that actually made it. So the final thing is we take this my post and this HTML that we just tested now, and we take that HTML and we put it onto the DOM. So I find some place on the DOM, get element by ID, in this case, an ID of Ajax posts. Its inner HTML, I'm going to add to it with this plus equals. Whatever's there is going to stay there, and I'm going to add to it with my post HTML, which is that stuff we just spun up. So let me get rid of this debugger. Let's find document down this whole thing. Whenever you're in doubt, grab it, go over here to the console, and paste it in, and see if you find something. And sure enough, I have Ajax posts here. And notice I put this dummy text in there. This div is in my application layout in Rails over here. Layouts, views, layouts, application. I put this in here as a little parking lot where I'm going to put this data. And this is the beginnings of a single page application, actually, where we have just parking places on the DOM identified by IDs and elements, or maybe classes, that we simply fill up with data. So this posts ... I just put that there so I could see it over here on the DOM. If I didn't have it there, you might not know it's there. Save that, refresh this. It goes away. Nobody knows I'm supposed to be putting my post over there, but I'd rather have it, because then I'm I know what's about to happen here. So I'm going to push this data onto that little spot of the DOM over there. So I expect now that I've proven that all this works. I have a post, which is an instance of capital P post. I have HTML because I called post.html on it. So now my post HTML is that magic HTML we just spun up. Now I'm going to put that over here. I'm going to append it to this document.element by ID Ajax posts. Its inner HTML I'm going to add to it. So the question for the group, when I do this, is this post dummy text over here going to disappear, or is it going to still be there and my new HTML goes underneath it? Or
It should be there, ain't it?
should still be there, right? If that plus equals thing, you can hardly see it, but it should still stay there. So let me refresh this. So there's my post. There's my 3 comments that we added in. That's my HTML, and yeah, we just appended it. I change this now to equals and refresh the page and hit the button. Now my dummy text is gone. So you're in charge of everything. You broke it, you fix it, or you own it. You know, you take over the DOM, you own it now. You own every piece of real estate on there, and you can control it with JavaScript. So we're a little bit over time, but that's the nutshell. That's the most of it. You know, the only other piece of it is new post. Did I get that working yet? So new post over there would be this piece here. Well, no. New post form. Let's see where I'm calling that. Oh, I don't have a button for that yet, do I? So maybe I need a listen for click of that thing. Where do I put it? Listen for new post form. Click. And let's see, what button am I going to listen to there? Let's do this with the selector thing. I want this button here of new post. So that is a button of dot, which means class. So there could be many of them. Ajax-new-post. Maybe that should be an ID. Maybe it should be a class. You might use a class because you might use the same technique to have many comments on many posts. So you want to be listening to all of the posts because you want to comment on one of them. In this case, new post form, maybe I just want to say an ID of Ajax new post. So I'll go back to where that is over here in my application layout. And I'm going to make this an ID of Ajax-new-post. And then I'm going to listen for it over here. ID of Ajax-new-post. Ajax-new, and then I'm going to double check. Ajax-new-post. And this is the place where I'm going to put the form when I create it. So when that button gets clicked, I'm going to call a function. And instead of get post, it's going to be new post form. Just making it up. And since I have static, I can probably do it like this. I think I can do post.new post form. And that'll create it. But I have to put it somewhere, don't I? I have to get it onto the DOM in a specific place. So maybe I say let new post form equal post.new, the result of calling capital P post static here, meaning I don't have to have an instance of post. And that's kind of a bit of a reach there. Let me land in here and see if that really works. See if I have new post form here at that point. So I'm listening for this click. But now when do I listen for this click? I load this page and all this stuff is already here, so I'm probably okay in listening for this click even up here. But I might choose to do that after I have loaded posts, for example. Totally legal to, maybe I do it down here. The point is you have control of it. I'll listen for them both because I know they're both there when I load this particular page. The point is I'm thinking about it and I've thought through what's going to happen. So I'm listening for a new post form click, which means I'm going to listen for a button of ID Ajax-new-post, and when there's a click of this functional fire, I've prevented the default, and then I expect that new post form, which I haven't used anywhere, which is why it's kind of grayed out. I've declared it but haven't used it. I expect that to be an instance of new post form, which is my static method here, function, that spins up this HTML. Haven't put it anywhere yet, but it should exist when I hit this debugger. So let me refresh this, go to the console. I hit new post button. I landed here. I float over it, and Chrome Magic just lets me float over new post form. It's kind of not even fair that you get to do that, but it's pretty awesome. And that's my post form. So new post, and it already kind of wants to complete it for me. I've confirmed that I've listened for the right button, I've clicked on it, and I have successfully called the post class and a static method that's there to create this HTML. Now I just need to put it on the page. So where is it going to go on the page? In this magic spot, which I gave it, down here, this div of ID new-post-form-div. Very verbose, but it's free. It doesn't cost anything to have a nice explicit ID for what you're doing. So that's a div with an ID of new post form div. And it was born over here in my application layout where I put it. Totally legal to do this. You could make an entire app in a few lines of code here of buttons and spots where you're going to put data from clicking the buttons. Totally legal. So I just want to demonstrate where it came from. Right now it's got the word form in it, in brackets, that's my dummy data. So maybe I'll replace that, like we talked about earlier. I'm going to replace that with this form. So now how do I find that thing? Well, I could use JavaScript and then go document query selector. Let's see, query selector div ID new-post-form-div. And maybe I'm not sure that really works. Let me grab it, go over here into the console And it looked like it found something. Yeah, that looks like my form. I could also have done it with jQuery. And so I could say $, in quotes, div, same stuff. Another thing that bothered me is like, well, these are jQuery and JavaScript. They're not in completely different things. jQuery is a library of JavaScript. But again, as you learn the curriculum, it all looks brand new. And you don't know really where to hang it all in your head, you know. There's 18 different ways. Well, there's at least 4 different ways to do an AJAX request, all of which seemed like total brand new, you know, gobbledygook to me when I first learned it. And then there's an XHR request. It's sometimes it just takes some perspective to see it's limited, it's finite, it's not the end of, it's not like this limitless, oh my God, it's all brand new. So here's one way to find it with JavaScript. Here's how we find it with jQuery. Let's prove it. Let's grab it over here. And it's a little bit of a different response. The jQuery comes back with this node thing, but the point is that's my element on the DOM that I want to do something with. I'll comment out the jQuery one. We'll go back with this JavaScript one and use that because it behaves differently. Remember up here we had document.getElementID. We said .innerHTML. That's the one you use for JavaScript. I'm going to set it equal to this form, new post form, that I just created. And then I'm going to take my debugger off. And let's refresh this. So I expect now that when I click this new post button, that the word form will be replaced with that form that we spun up there. Can't see it very well, but there it is, new post comment form. That is reading the requirement of render a form for creating a resource that is submitting dynamically through JavaScript. Now, I created that form here on the JavaScript side. You could also reach back and pull a form out of your hat over here in your views. I might have a form over here, a new comment form. I could reach over and grab that. Harder, more cumbersome to me actually than just doing it in JavaScript like this, where we I painted the form here on the inside of JavaScript. But you could and legally do it by pulling in a partial. So new comment form, in order to do that, I'd have to go into my post controller. And I guess you could go here to the new action and render new. I think it's layout false because you don't want all the other baggage that comes with it. And you could make a GET request here from AJAX to get this form, and perfectly legal to do. I kind of like this way because it's all in one place, and then I can tweak this form and all in one place. So anyway, we're kind of running along here. If anybody has any last minute insights or questions, that's most of it. If you haven't done your kickoff, go to this site here. I'm going to put a few things in the chat. Is anyone not on this channel, Rails-JS-project section channel? Where is it? I'm going to find Slack.
Honestly, not sure if I'm in there or not.
If you're not, we'll invite you right now. Let me just get this thing spun open here.
Okay, that's for Slack, right?
Yeah, it's just taking me forever to get Slack open. There it comes. And it'll be over here in, it's going so slow. Rails.js section. I guess this is after you've passed your Rails project. Has everybody here on the call passed their Rails project?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah,
I haven't done mine yet.
You haven't done yours yet? Well, then you're not allowed to come to this channel. Anyway, I'm just kidding. I think that's what the purpose of it is. You get, like, when you pass the Rails project, the assessor invites you to this channel. If you're already on, if anybody has already passed the Rails project, and then even if you're not up to the JavaScript project, we should invite you to this channel. So there's that, and then at the top of this channel pinned is my big fat intro email that you'll get if I catch you in the right time. If you don't, just go here and grab it. This is me introducing myself and our different URLs and stuff. When you go to schedule, it's right here. This is where you schedule your kickoff, and that's in that email. You just pick a spot, and then I have some nice resources here, which is kind of what we just spun through now, all on this page. So that's Smith Tech. Let me just put this in the chat. Bam. Ari is not in there. Okay, let me invite you right now. So let me go there. Yeah, that's you. You have been invited. Anyone else? Ethel, Terry. Yeah. So the only thing left really to do on this project now is, well, show a post, show the comments. Kind of did that. We pulled a form in, but get data off this form and post it back to the server with a post request. But maybe we'll cover that Wednesday. And I'll see if I can figure out how to get this recording off of this WeWork system onto our app. That's my biggest problem is WeWork owns the Zoom thing now, but I don't know that I can share the recording onto the student app like I want to. I'll have to figure that out. So, anybody? Oh, there's a message. Let's see. Thanks. All right, everybody. Have a great night. We do this every Monday and Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock. So it never gets old. I love it. I love to see data show up where I expect it. So I'm here to help. Also, Tuesdays and Thursdays, Alice Balbuena does the JavaScript meeting at 11 a.m. Eastern. She's a genius on JavaScript. So don't waste your chances. I mean, go listen to what she has to say. Ask her questions as well. So those are four appointments every week, four meetings we have every week to help you with your project, in addition to the kickoff.
Yeah, Brad, I didn't see Alice listed for this week.
Start bugging her. She keeps, every time last time I talked to her, she says, oh yeah, I got to put my meetings up this week. Maybe we should have students pinging her. I think she just forgets to put the meeting up, you know.
Oh.
So,
Well,
but yeah, it's supposed
hard
to
to join it if it's not there.
Oh, come on. What kind of, that's no excuse.
Yeah.
How can I join a meeting if it's not really there?
Right.
Where's the thing? Let's just see, learn.
Thank you, sir. I'll be eavesdropping again sometime soon.
All right, man. And it's Mr. Sir.
Aye, Mr. Sir.
Don't have to call me. All right, people. Have a great night. I really enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, Brad. Thanks so much. Bye.